I called my doctor and I said, I think I have early onset Alzheimer's. I need you to test me. I was lying to myself. I'm tracking everything. I'm telling everyone I'm doing all the things, but I'm not. I made a decision that I was going to prioritize myself. That was a tough thing to do because we are so used to giving up our time, giving up our energy to everybody else who needs it before we even think about what we need for ourselves. You can go on diet like I did through so many cycles until you deal with what's going up in the brain. Nothing is going to click or last.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Old Chicks No Shit podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Arthurton. Today, I am bringing you an incredibly inspiring transformation story. My guest is Jodi Echakowitz, who set out to improve her health, to get fit, and to lose some weight. And what ended up happening was a complete reinvention story that changed her identity and how she lives her life. I've been following Jodi on Instagram for a number of years now and watching her journey, which honestly has been truly inspiring. And today I'm so excited to unpack this story with you. So let's jump in. Jodi, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share.
So you have been on a pretty impressive health transformation journey in the last few years. I've been following you on Instagram for a while and watched the very many evolutions of Jodi along the way. So I would love for you to kind of give us a snapshot of where were you, like what was your life like before you began this journey and what prompted you to start down this path?
Sounds good. Well, let me dig in. So firstly, I have been somebody who my entire life I've exercised. I've always gone to the gym. I've loved it. In high school, I played a lot of sports. So very active. That's just always been me.
Yeah.
But it got to a point probably about, and by the way, I have my husband. We've been married. We met when I was 15. And so we've been together. We've always worked out together. And we've just, we've had a great life together. We got married in South Africa. We emigrated and we've got two fabulous kids. And probably about 2 years before the pandemic started, we had both been actually working out at a gym with a trainer, and the trainer left, moved to Montreal. And at that point, my trainer was really there as motivation for me, or more of accountability for me to actually show up at the gym, get my workouts done. And so I used to train anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week. And I never had a program, didn't know anything, used to show up. But when this trainer left, I could not find somebody that I really just sort of clicked with me and that I felt comfortable with. And I ended up just slacking off and not going to the gym. So obviously, as somebody who has always exercised, this was a big change for me. And I'm somebody also throughout my entire life, I have yo-yo dieted. Like literally, if there was an Olympic medal for it, I'd be like literally in first place. So I've done that my whole life. And it was crazy because I had in mind always this goal weight that I wanted to be at. And it really came to when I was pregnant with both my kids. That was my starting weight for each pregnancy. And I was able to actually, after each pregnancy, I gained 30 pounds, was able to get back. And that was 130 pounds was my target. But I could never maintain it. It doesn't matter how many times I got either to that weight or close to it, I could never maintain a weight. But 2 years before the pandemic started, so this trainer left, going to the gym at least gave me a little bit of an accountability to actually be active, get my body moving.
Right.
But and when he left, I really, I've never had great eating habits. I'm always been the person who would rather have dessert first and then, and then
Right.
have my main meal if there's space for it. That's just me. I was never a great eater. I never ate. I didn't used to love vegetables, but give me all the sweet stuff, give me a big bag of chips and you got a happy
Right.
camper.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was already in perimenopause, like probably 2 3 years before the trainer left, and so and then you add on not exercising, eating poorly, and of course the weight starts to creep up. And so by the time the pandemic rolled around, I was at my heaviest weight ever. I had ballooned to like just under 176 pounds, which was that was like 15 pounds heavier than when I was full term pregnant with either of my two
Mm,
kids. And I'm only 5'3". People think I'm a lot taller because I have long femurs, but on a short body, it's a lot of
yeah.
weight to carry. So of course, when you're in perimenopause, you go through the usual things, not sleeping very well, hot flashes, brain fog, that kind of stuff. But what happened very early in 2020, the brain fog was so bad that there were people who've been part of my team. I have my own PR agency that have been part of my team for years. There were clients I'd worked with for years. Even my best friend could not remember their names. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
that was so scary. And I'm like, yes, there's brain fog, but this was something I'd never really experienced. One day I went down into the kitchen, looked at the fridge, didn't know what it was called. And I'm like, okay, the one thing that terrifies me, and I'm an adventurer, I like to do fun things, but the one thing that terrifies me is anything around Alzheimer's, memory,
Mm,
that kind of
yeah.
thing.
Hmm.
Years back I'd read the book Still Alice, and it just to
Right.
this day haunts me around that entire story. So literally I called my doctor and I said, I think I have early onset Alzheimer's. I need you to test me. So went into her office and she spent a good hour or so with me and went through like pre-cognitive testing, I guess testing that your own physician would do prior to sending you off to a specialist. And it was cognitive and memory were the two areas. The cognitive stuff I passed with flying colors. No issues around drawing a house, drawing a clock with
Right.
time on it, all that kind of thing. But the memory stuff, she gave me 5 words to remember throughout the hour long, evaluation that she went through with me. And I think the most I remembered was probably 2 words of the five, and one for sure. And she said to me at the end of it, she says, I have good news and bad news. The good news is you don't have early onset Alzheimer's. Your cognition is fine, but your recall is shocking. And
Mm,
I'm like, okay. The first thing she said to me, and of course, being my physician, she has been my physician for a very long time, almost, I'd say, probably within a year of me moving to Canada, and I've been here over 30 years. She said to me, how's your nutrition? She didn't say anything about my weight. She asked me, how's my nutrition? Of course, back then, I would literally call my husband on his way home from work, probably at least 2, 3 times a week, and say, please, can you bring me home a bag of all dress chips? But not just a grab bag or a small bag. This is the family size bag. And I would end up having that for dinner. The
oh,
rest of my day, I would always think that, okay, my eating is not too bad. I would be thinking, okay, I'm eating protein. Of course, what's my protein in my mind? Having an apple with peanut butter. I'm having an apple, but I'm having protein. Of course, I now know that peanut butter is a fat. Back then, I did not.
right.
So, but of course, I'm eating poorly. So I said to her, my nutrition is really bad. She said to me, can you get your nutrition in check? So in my mind, of course, yes, I can try and lose the weight. I'm not thinking about eating healthily. I'm thinking about weight. But she didn't even touch on weight. She didn't even
Oh,
ask me
interesting.
that. Yeah, it's just in my mind, I know that I'm overweight, right? So,
Right.
so I'm like, give me some time, because she said I can refer you to a nutritionist. I said, give me some time. Let me go back on Weight Watchers. I'm sure I can do this. So of course I go back on Weight Watchers, but I'm lying to myself through all this time. I'm eating, I'm counting my points and doing whatever, following the program. But I'm eating all these, things in between. There's stuff that I'm not tracking. My habits are so bad. And clearly, the pain of where I was at was not great enough for me to actually
Right.
focus and do what I needed to do. So I'm like, okay, 6 months in, Weight Watchers is not working for me. But I'd lost weight, after both my kids with Weight Watchers and all the many times after that.
Yeah.
Again, still could never maintain it. So I thought I'll try Noom, and Noom doesn't work for me. It's great from a mindset perspective, but my eating is still out of whack. I'm
Right.
still lying to myself, like, I'm still not making progress. And at that point, I was pretty desperate. I'm like, what the heck am I going to do? My brain fog's getting worse. It's, nothing's improving, and my sleep is terrible. I'm going to bed super late. I don't have the energy to wake up in the morning to exercise. I actually bought a Peloton bike and I had some gym equipment at home, but I was too tired. I was just, not healthy.
Right.
So
So how was the brain fog affecting your life? Because I'm like, you run a business, right? Like, were you able to like function during the day, or were you trying to like dropping things, or like how was that experience?
I've I've always joked that in our family memory is an issue. Like literally if I don't write something down, it doesn't get done.
I can relate.
But this was I think a lot of us can, but this time was actually even worse. Literally having to take dozens of notes around everything. I mean, I've always been a good note taker, but really being so conscious around doing things. But the problem was really around the energy. It was not so much even the
Right.
brain fog, it was more the energy. And I think when you're tired, when you don't have energy, I know for me, like I get such mental clarity from exercise, but everything was snowballing. When you're too tired to work out, so you don't work out, you don't have the mental clarity because you don't work out, it just affects everything.
Yeah.
So it was just terrible. Like, when it comes to like the brain fog, like even little things, I mean, I play little games with myself now. When you have two-factor authentication and you get sent a text and you have to enter in the six-digit number. Before I could maybe remember one or two numbers and then I'd have to go back and
Oh,
copy it.
wow.
Now I play games with myself and I enter all six numbers because my memory and my recall is great. So it's just, but it affects everything
Everything.
about your day-to-day life.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
even just like the mental stress of not remembering things, like that in itself, right?
That that freaked me right out. Like just the
Yeah.
idea that I couldn't remember, like literally picking up the phone to call my best friend and not remembering who am I calling? Like what. And hers
Right.
is probably one of the few. Hers and my husband's are like probably the two only numbers that I know off by heart. I could remember her number, funnily enough, but not her name. It was just the most bizarre thing I'd ever experienced.
So why do you think, you're trying all these different ways to lose weight? Like, what do you think the thing was that was really holding you back? Like, was it the programs themselves, or was there like, why did those things not work for you, do you think?
I think for me, I was lying to myself and lying to myself, oh no, I'm tracking everything. I'm telling everyone I'm doing all
Oh,
the things, but I'm not. I'm lying to myself. I'm still eating the junk. I'm not following through. I'm not doing the program exactly.
mm,
And I think anytime, I mean, I now know like if you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight,
right.
but the problem for me is that it was my nutrition that was a problem. It wasn't even so much that my doctor cared so much about the weight. She was interested in what I was eating. I mean, she said to me at the end of that appointment, garbage in, garbage out. And that makes so much sense.
Right.
But, and now I've realized is that, and this is, I think it's a Tony Robbins quote, but really when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, that's when you actually take action. So I got to a point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. Like just I was feeling so horrible. I had no energy. Literally walking up the stairs in my house was exhausting. And this was brain fog aside. It was all the physical feeling and effects.
Right.
So, that's when I was like, finally, okay, I have to do something.
Okay, so you reach your breaking point. You're like, okay, I don't want to live this way anymore. You make a decision. What is the very first step then you take after you make that decision?
Well, I'll tell you, my step was actually kind of almost at the parallel to the conversation I had with my doctor. I had met somebody back in 2018, and so as you connect, it was that through a woman's entrepreneur event, and I happened to stay connected with her on Instagram. Of course, she's sharing her workout. She's a physique athlete, participating in competitions, and I'm following what she's doing, and I'm like, amazing, gorgeous body, not my thing. But at one point, she shared the profile of a woman who was very much like me, same kind of age, had a kid, actually ran a PR agency, so very similar kind of
Right.
profile, but had gone through a major transformation and had been a teammate of this woman. So I reached out to her and I asked her about what she did, what program she had done, and she at that point told me about the Wonder Woman. But
Mm,
again, that pain that I felt eventually wasn't, what I was feeling back then. In fact, there was an opportunity for me to apply in that first year. But again, I wasn't at the point where, like I always said,
Right.
in order for me to lose weight any time throughout, literally throughout my life, I always felt like I had to be mindset ready. I wasn't ready then. Like I wasn't completely broken at that point. I still felt like I had more chances to give myself. But it wasn't until literally 18 months after I saw my doctor in the summer of 2021 that I saw Michelle McDonald put out a call for applicants for a transformation program. And I'm like, I have to do this. I have to apply because I cannot live like this. It's just, it's
Yeah.
not good for me. I'm not showing up for myself, for my team, for my family. And so I put in the application. So I really do think that the very first thing that you want to do, just to answer your
Yeah.
question, is when you kind of feel like you're broken, you can't do anything else, is reach out. Ask people that you know for support, for help. Because I think the problem is that we're especially as women, we're so used to relying
Mm.
on ourselves for everything. And it's hard for us to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think for me, being able to ask for help, and for me, it was in the form of actually applying for the application so that I could submit it. That for me was me reaching out to make a change.
Yeah,
So,
and it's,
yeah.
such an important point that you raise about, as women, we are taught to take care of everyone and everything. So you're holding down the business, you're taking care of your family, and then somewhere on that list, usually at the very, very bottom where the tumbleweed and the dust bunnies are, is us, right? And
Yeah.
it's easy to overlook ourselves because
Yeah.
we're completely occupied with making sure everybody else is okay.
Exactly. And I think that's it. We're natural born caregivers,
Yep.
but we forget that when we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
The whole, oxygen mask thing. So
exactly.
you joined this program. What is the difference? I mean, obviously, I've been following you as part of the Wonder Woman group, and your transformation has been incredible, and we'll get to that. But like, what was the hardest struggle for you at the beginning of joining this program?
Well, I think for me, it was a matter of taking guidance. I mean, I'd worked with a trainer like literally for 17 years, but that trainer was pure accountability. Working with a coach is so different. A
Mm-hmm.
coach really, firstly, it was all encompassing. The Wonder Woman really focuses on mindset, strength training, and nutrition. So, firstly, it's that trifecta, which I'd never had before. I had
Right.
pieces here, pieces there. I'd never had it really before. So, I think for me, it was to actually take the guidance from somebody who understands the way that women work, the way that we can get healthy, and who has actually taken other people through a major transformation and place all your trust in them. And I think often for us, it's hard to do that. It's hard to let go. And so I think that was probably one of the hard things for me is, I know how to do this, but no, actually you don't. You need to actually rely on a coach. And I think sometimes that's really hard is giving that trust.
Yep.
That was the first thing. The second thing that was probably the hardest thing to do, which kind of goes back to the oxygen mask discussion, is when I started this, I made a decision that I was going to prioritize myself. I was going to put myself first before anybody else. And I can tell you that was a tough thing to do. I mean, to this day, that is what I do. But it's hard to do because we are so used to giving up our time, giving up our energy to everybody else who needs it before we even think about what we need for ourselves. And this
Yeah.
time it was like, I am going to do the things that I need. I'm going to get myself in check here. And once I'm done taking care of me, I will then take care of everyone else. And I continue with that today. But it's hard to make that switch.
It really is hard to make that switch. And I think a big part of that is like, as women, I mean, from the time that we are born, we are taught to see our value in, what we do for other people. Right?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
am I a good wife? Am I a good sister? Am I a good mom? Am I a good employee? Am I a good business owner? Right? Like all of those things, which are, external validations for us. But to actually say, and,
exactly,
you hear people say this all the time, oh, well, it's selfish, right? Like there's this negative
exactly.
association with the fact that I'm going to prioritize myself, which I mean, anybody who's been through a transformation knows like you can't have it any other way. Like you have to put yourself into the equation.
Exactly. And I actually thought at first I was being selfish. That is exactly how I framed it to myself. And then I kind of reasoned with myself that I'm actually not being selfish because by me doing this work, putting myself first, I can be there for everybody else who needs me.
Yeah.
But if I don't take care of me first, there, who knows? Like if my health is declining, borderline high cholesterol, oh well, borderline it was Hashimoto's, very high or borderline high cholesterol. Like just so many of my markers were not good,
Yeah.
and I have heart disease in my family, and it's like I don't want to go as a young parent. I've got, my oldest kid has special needs. It's like I need to be around here for my
Oh,
family, and
yeah.
that was my priority. And I wanted to make sure I was going to do whatever I could to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to the point that you made as well too, like we often can't see ourselves objectively, right? Like I always say, you can't read the label from inside the jar, right?
I
So,
love that.
like having a coach to like call you on your BS, to challenge the way that you think, to challenge even the way that you speak about yourself and your life.
Oh, that is probably the biggest thing. I mean, what I realized is the way that I spoke to myself, and I think the way us as women speak to ourselves,
Yeah,
I would never speak to a friend that way, never.
never, never. I know
And
the internal talk
all of
track.
that has changed.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crazy, So all of that has shifted. So, and that's where I think the mindset work comes in, because you can go on diet like I did through so many cycles of my life, and you can not maintain the weight. There's so many things that are happening that where you just kind of, put the weight back on, or you're not consistent with training, whatever it is. But until you deal with what's going up in the brain, nothing is going to click or last.
Yeah, and like on my own midlife transformation journey, I mean, it's not exactly the same as yours. Like I was, rebuilding my life after being divorced, unemployed, an empty nester, and dealing with a stress-related illness. The first thing that I said to myself is if I want my life to be different, then I have to show up differently in it, right? And that's where the part about having somebody to call you on your shit because we can't see it, right?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's been so life changing. In fact, so many people say, oh, they can see this huge transformation I went through. And quite honestly, I think the biggest shift in me has been not only with my identity as a human, I now identify as an athlete, which just blows my mind. But not only that, but it's just in terms of the self love, the self compassion, and learning to understand what was it that subconsciously was hidden in my brain all these years that actually caused me to self sabotage every time I felt good about myself. Why couldn't I maintain my weight? So it's
Wow.
just, it's huge.
So let's unpack that for a second because I mean, yes, you have had a very obvious physical transformation. I mean, you how much weight did you end up losing in that?
55 pounds.
So 55 pounds gone off your body, but 100,000 pounds gone off your brain, or more, a million
100%
pounds.
or more. Exactly, right? A few
Right.
tons, right? So, yeah.
So how? Okay. So how did that mental shift transpire? Like what was the worst thing for you going into that? Like was it the talk track? Like was it because even that you just said about your identity shifted, and that's like success in anything comes down to identity shift for sure. You have to see yourself as the thing, right? So you went from feeling fat, overweight, tired, and probably feeling like you're failing at a lot of
Oh,
things,
yeah.
right? To I am an athlete. Like, yeah. How long was
So,
that transformation? How long did that take?
so it took me, it was probably around 4 months into my journey where I realized that I was an athlete. So I'll share some of this with you. So,
Yeah.
firstly, as part of the coaching program, there are two key books that were recommended. In fact, it's one of the books I always go to, but The Big Leap, and the other one is Atomic Habits.
My two
Okay, so
favorite
those
books.
Those are the two books. They're non-negotiable,
Yeah.
and we would deep dive into them because I think even for us, firstly, I'd never read, never until I started my journey, a self-help book. I'd never
Oh,
listened
interesting.
to a podcast. I'd never done anything until then because I don't need it. Why do I need it, right? And so it was my first time ever diving into it. And so, but so many of us, I think we pick up a book and we read it ourselves and we kind of read it, but we gloss over it. We don't really sit at the end of every chapter and make sure that we've digested the information, that we've fully comprehended and actually sat down and thought about how does this translate to me? We move on to the next chapter and then we're done with the first one and then the second and so on. What I loved about this program is we would deep dive into each chapter, chapter by chapter, with other folks that were, under the
Nice.
same coach. We would deep dive, go through, answer questions, and have to actually show that we understand. But as part of that, one of the things that I learned through going through the big leap is this thing called the upper limit. And basically, this is the thing that causes you to self-sabotage anytime that you're in a good place, that you feel
Yeah.
good about yourself. And I had to dig deep, but ultimately what I realized is that there was something that my mom said to me when I was a teenager. I was already dating my husband, so I must have been around 16. And she said to me, "You look like a whore." I had felt so good about myself at that time. I didn't have a great relationship with my mom, but I had felt so good about myself at that particular time. Wearing, I don't know if you remember, it was the early Madonna era, wearing
Right.
leggings with the skirt over, and I
Right.
was wearing these white leggings, white skirt. I had makeup on, and I just felt so good. And when she said that to me, and my husband was actually, obviously he was my boyfriend back then, but he was around, so he remembers it too. And I just felt so deflated. But what I didn't realize is at the back of my mind, literally throughout my entire life, anytime that I felt good about myself, I self sabotaged because I felt I was not worthy. And so, and I get goosebumps just saying that because I have come so far on this journey. And what I realized is that now, I'm at the point where nobody gets to decide how I look, how I feel, except for me. And
Wow.
it's so powerful. So I had to, the other thing is throughout my entire life I had such self-loathing, between the
Mm.
way that I spoke to myself, you're so fat, oh, you look so ugly, or you're such an idiot. These are the ways that, and I'm sure it's not just me, but these were the
Yeah.
ways that I spoke to myself. And so I would even end up doing things where I'd look in the mirror and I would do mirror talk. I would look at myself and I'm like, I love you. Like, you're worthy
Yeah.
of my love. And just, I mean, I read a lot of, other books like The Mountain Is You and just dealing with the mindset. So that's sort of that part of it. Then when
Yeah.
it comes to the athlete side of things, is through the program, there are so many things that we learned to do. For example, planning macros,
Mm.
tracking macros, making sure that we get, a good 7 to 8 hours sleep. For me, it's more like 6.5 to 7. It's
Right.
certainly a whole lot better than what it used to be, but, getting a decent night's sleep, planning my workouts for the next day, filming your workouts, looking at your workouts and learning how to self-coach. Was that move correct? These are all things that I learned at a retreat that was done by the Wonder Woman in the April of 2022. That these are things that they had a session on what it looks like to be an athlete. And these are all things that an athlete does. They think, is this something that an athlete would do? And that was the way I was starting to think. And I'm like, wow, I am actually an athlete. Like, who knew? And so it's just that whole shift, the way I live my life, the way I make decisions is truly around the work that an athlete would do. And so that is how I see myself now, obviously as somebody who's always exercised, who's loved sports, and obviously there's the difference between exercise and training. I now train. Exercise was me showing up, not knowing what my workout was. Now I train with intention. I have overall body tension. I'm making sure I'm recruiting the right muscles, that I have mind-muscle connection. These are the ways that an athlete thinks and lives. And that is how I live my life today. So very, very different.
Wow. Well, and to your point, like you can be doing all of that kind of stuff, but until you've dealt with that underlying thing, and we all have that thing, some seemingly innocuous comment that somebody made, like for me, it was, I remember when I was in puberty and, I started to get a little bit chunky, and my uncle saying to me, "Oh, you got fat." And that stuck in my brain as like an 11-year-old girl that I carried forward. And like, I mean, I spent most of my life trying to make my body look a certain way, like at war with my own physical
Yeah.
body, until I finally figured that out through books like The Big Leap and other things like that. But until you deal with that underlying thing, you're going to trip yourself up along the way. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
It's like the good and evil sitting on your shoulders, right?
yeah,
It's just you have this dialogue that you don't even realize is going on in your brain that's
yeah,
telling you that, just grab that bag of chips. It's good. You enjoy it. Not thinking, hold on, what's the impact of what I'm doing? Why am I doing that?
yeah,
And it's mindless, right? I would literally sit with a bag of chips in front of me watching TV, and by the end of, 15, 20 minutes, I'd be done. And I'm like, what the heck? I don't even remember eating.
right,
So
right,
mindless. So yeah, it's crazy. And so I think we are so impressionable as kids, and we don't realize how the things that people say impact us. I mean, even for me as a parent, I always want to say, because I knew I didn't have a good relationship with my mom, I was like, okay, I've learned how not to raise my kids, but
right,
I wasn't perfect. I wasn't perfect either, because I didn't sort this shit out in my head until my kids were like in their 20s.
right.
So I'm like, I'm sorry, guys, if I said anything, you know,
It's so
it's
true.
just,
Yeah.
right?
It's so true because, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will continue to repeat the same pattern. Because what is it they say? Like our
100%.
subconscious mind runs like 95% of how we show up in the world, right?
Oh, I believe
We believe
that.
we're in control, right? Because we're controlling this tiny little surface layer, right? But underneath it, it's all pre-programmed. Like
A hundred,
it's running.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. So I would say, like if you have the opportunity to do some mindset work, like just
Yeah.
do it. Like I can't believe I waited so long.
I
My
know.
life might have been very different, but you know what? I've got the rest of my life to live, literally in truly the best shape of my life, in, with more muscle than I've ever had, and just so self-confident, something, and so much self-love, something that I've just never had in the first
Mm,
50 years of my life.
how
So
beautiful is that? I truly believe that everything happens in its perfect time. Like we come to the thing when we're ready for the thing. And sometimes we're older and sometimes we're younger. Cause I think all the time too, I'm like, man, if I know that when I was in my 20s, it might have been a little
right?
bit different. But like, hey, you know what? We've still got like 30, 40 years ahead of us to be able to have that. And that journey is all part of the process, right? Like, you had to go through what you went through to become the pro woman that you are.
Exactly. And I think one of the other things is so many of us think, okay, like I started this, it was around 3 months before I turned 51 that I actually started my transformation program. And at that age, I'm thinking to myself, it's too late already. Why bother? you know
Right.
and I think so many people think that, but Joan, uh you
Oh,
know
train with Joan.
Joan
Yeah.
McDonald, Train with Joan, like she reminded me, she was one of the people who initially inspired me. It's like, if she can change her life starting at 70, I damn well can do this at 50.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, her transformation has been absolutely incredible. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, she
she
was on the
inspires
show.
me daily.
Oh, yeah, she was on the show a few years back, but I need to get her back again because, like, even in that time, like, she's accomplished so much. Like, it's
Oh yeah.
truly inspirational. So here you are. I mean, you think like an athlete. You most definitely look like an athlete. And then recently, I know you made the decision to have some plastic surgery. What prompted you to that decision, and what was that process like for you?
So, as somebody who's obviously carried so much extra weight, throughout most of my life, first it was 10 pounds, then 15, then 20, and of course it just, ended up being really 55 pounds over. I just, the clothes were big, everything was big, And when you start to lose weight in your 50s, your skin is not as elastic as when you're younger. So ultimately, I lost a lot of the weight, and I always thought actually that the loose skin, because I did end up having a lot of loose skin. Although people look at me and they're like, "Where was the loose skin?" Of course, we ourselves know I could feel it. I'd go like on all fours to do a cat cow stretch or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, the my socks with rocks are like hanging, and my the stomach, the skin on my stomach is hanging, and it's just so uncomfortable. People don't obviously see that; they see me when I'm standing upright, and I always thought that the loose skin for me would be my reminder of my journey and how far I've come, and ultimately, I ended up at the end of January. I shared a post. I was traveling in the UK, and I was considering, this whole idea of having plastic surgery, and I'd actually booked a consult for February. But I was in two minds because, on one hand, my loose skin is my reminder. And then on the other hand, I'm not somebody who does elective surgeries. Like, I've never done an elective surgery in my life. So why am I going to be doing this? And people in the community, people who follow me on Instagram, were phenomenal. They all came in and said, why can't your scars from surgery be your reminder instead of the loose skin? Do what's going to make you happy. You got the rest of your life to live. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty powerful. And so I was like, that is so true. But we would never think of that ourselves. I was just so conflicted. And it took the community reminding me that I didn't have to be so narrow-minded around sort of seeing this, this loose skin as, my reminder, I'm not going to go back there. And so I decided, okay, we're going to do that. And so that's the path I went down. I did 3 consults, finally decided on a surgeon, and booked surgery in and about my travel so that I could get it done. And today, actually, I'm 7 weeks post-op.
Amazing. And you look phenomenal. Yeah,
Thank you.
and thank you for sharing that, like, little bit of a conflict that you have with plastic surgery, because there is a lot of there's a lot of opinions, let's put it this way, on plastic surgery. But like, your decision is like, you have completely shifted from the inside out. And so now aligning the outside with the inside, right? Like, I can
Yeah.
see that as just being a very, powerful way to kind of like solidify this huge
That's
shift that you've had.
That's exactly it. And I kind of feel like I've put in the work. So many people are like,
Yeah.
oh, you're not happy with yourself, or, that's why you're doing it. I'm like, no, that's not it. It's like, if I can live the rest of my life in the body that I have created with the muscle that I've built, why not?
Yeah.
I don't have to be shameful of it. And so literally, as you said, the outside now matches the inside. And it's so exciting to be that way, because I've never had that. I've just never had the kind of body that I have now. I've never been this strong. I've never had this much muscle, and truly the insides and the outsides match, and
Yeah.
it's such a beautiful thing. And because of the conflict that people see, that's also one of the reasons why I chose to share my journey so publicly with
Mhm.
plastic surgery, because there is such a stigma about it. And people are like, oh yeah, I'm looking super refreshed and feeling great. It's like, and they won't share, you know, what they've had done,
Yeah.
It's, I had issues with, I had this deep furrow in my, between my eyes, like probably 7, 8 years ago. And I started doing Dysport so that I didn't have to, look like I was constantly frowning.
Right.
And I've shared that before. Why wouldn't I share that I've had plastic surgery?
Yeah.
But, I think that's the idea, is this is who I am. I'm such an open book, whether it's good or bad, that's up to you, to everybody to
Yeah.
decide. But I feel that my experiences are there to help others. And, I get messages all the time, whether it's about my transformation and sort of helping people sort of realize that this is possible, you can change your life, or whether it's about plastic surgery and sort of helping people realize that, it is okay to get plastic surgery done. the messages I've had are so beautiful. I've really only had one person who, commented that I was an effing cheater. And I'm like, okay, you do you, you know?
Yeah. Well, and okay, to that point, right? Like there's so much conversation about women trying to erase age, right? Because age is not a socially acceptable thing. Like, God forbid you should actually look your age, right? And there's like that kind of a motivation. Like, but I feel like what you've done is very, very different than that because for you, it's almost, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but like listening to your story, it's about empowering your age, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love
like,
that.
yeah, yeah. So it
No,
isn't about
I've
hiding anything. It's about like really just showing what's possible, right? And feeling empowered to move forward.
Exactly. And that's the thing is it's definitely not about, hiding my age. I mean, who knows, maybe in, 10 years or whatever I'd want to have a facelift. Who knows?
Yes.
I love that going through this journey. I mean, my skin is better, everything is better, and now I've got the body that matches the work that I've done.
Yeah.
Why not?
And you
You
earned it
know?
rep by rep by rep, showing up for every
Ex
workout.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, and that's just me wanting to look my absolute best. For me. I'm
For
not
you.
not doing this for anyone else. It
I
is for
love that.
me.
I love
You know,
that.
I lived I lived a life, the first 50 years with such self-loathing. If this is what I want to do, so that everything kind of matches and works with the huge mindset shift that I've had, why the heck not?
Why the heck not? I love that. So, what's next on your growth and transformation journey? Because here's the thing about it, it's kind of addictive, right?
Well, I can tell you it's so addictive. So when I first, the person who ultimately ended up leading me on my path to the Wonder Woman, being a physique athlete, I was like, oh, not my thing. I'm never going to get on stage. Wouldn't you know, last year in November, what did I do?
Oh, you
I got
did.
on stage. I did. I did. I competed in the transformation category at FMG Mexico. And, I love stepping out of my comfort zone. Pretty much this entire journey, sharing everything I do on
Mm,
Instagram. It's just all of that has been pushing me to sit in the discomfort of doing things that I wouldn't usually have done. Even though I'm an open book, who chooses to share their boobs and whatever else on Instagram?
be
But
naked
hey,
on
why not?
Instagram. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, so I decided that, as a parent, we tell our kids, how can you say no to something until you've tried it and you know that you don't like it? So last year, June, I took my own advice and I messaged Michelle McDonald, my coach, and I'm like, guess what? I got a surprise for you. And I said to her, I'm going to compete. I think she nearly fell off her chair. And so I did it. And truly, posing was the hardest part. Getting on stage, my knees were doing this because it was terrifying for me. But do you know that I absolutely loved the experience? And I cannot wait to go back and actually get on stage, this time in a regular category, not in transformation. So that
Wow.
is something I'd like to do, and we'll see probably next year. We'll see how the year goes. But the other thing that I'm doing, and again, this comes with sitting in discomfort, is I had learned, in the pandemic that I really enjoy hiking. We'd get out, we'd walk outside. Obviously, what else is there to do when you're in lockdown? And
Yeah.
ultimately, once we could actually get out into nature. And I decided that I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. So I have scheduled, and I'm doing this literally. I will have just gotten down from Kilimanjaro on my 55th birthday next March. So that is my next adventure.
Oh,
And like people are like, oh, like, do you love mountain climbing? I'm like, are you out of your mind? No, no, I like being outdoors, and but this is a challenge because it's as much a physical challenge as it is a mental
mental
challenge.
challenge.
And for me, the growth that happens when you do things that make you uncomfortable has just up until now been phenomenal. So I think I'm always going to be looking for things to push the boundary. Like even in literally at the end of, I mean, it took me just over 9 months to drop that 55 pounds. And that December, I decided to do a photo shoot with Kai York, who is a phenomenal photographer.
Hmm.
And in that shoot, I was actually the first one, a whole bunch of us, with the Wonder Woman actually did the photo shoot. I was the
Yeah.
first one to go in there. And I did a photo shoot wearing these gorgeous lace cuffs and nothing else. And I'm like, I am posing nude. This is me stepping way out of that comfort zone and doing
Wow.
things that make me uncomfortable. And obviously, it was a very tasteful photo. You can't see anything. But it literally, I was wearing the cuffs from, that kind of reminded me of the Wonder Woman. And that was kind of like this whole focus for me was this is the initiative that allowed me to have this identity shift that has literally changed my life forever. And so that's how I honored that. So yeah, I'm always going to find something that makes me uncomfortable.
So who would you have ever thought, like if somebody had told you like at age 49 or age 50 that like this would be your life, could you have even imagined it was
I would have
possible?
told no, never.
Mm.
I would have said, "Are you out of your mind?" Like literally. There is not a chance. Back then I didn't like I love travel, I love adventure, but I would never have been so bold as to have done the things that I've done in the last,
Mm.
almost 4 years.
I love this story so much. Like, okay, I got goosebumps because whenever, like, I mean, my mission on this planet is about inspiring midlife women to see themselves as powerful because we've been told that, first of all, as women, we're not. And then if you add age to that, you're even like, but the reality is we are capable of so much more than we ever give ourselves credit for. And I think your story is such a beautiful and powerful example of that. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing that with us today. Because oh my god, like okay, I have tears of truth and goosebumps, which
It
so
it's
incredible.
it is amazing. It's truly changed my life. And what's beautiful is because it's changed my life and I share, I'm now able to inspire others to do the same. And that to me is such an incredible gift.
Oh yeah. So to those of you listening, we will make sure that Jodi's Instagram handle gets put in the show notes because if you take nothing else from this podcast episode, just go follow her on Instagram. That's all you need to do because it is truly an inspiring journey. And I cannot wait to see you share your journey of Kilimanjaro. You are going to share that, right?
Well, there's no, okay, so this is the interesting, I will definitely share it. It will be after because
Of course.
there are two things that are going to put me even further out of my comfort zone for this climb. There is no cellular coverage during the climb.
Okay.
Even on vacation, I always have cell coverage. And number two, you are not showering. You have no access to a proper shower for 7 days. You're like literally doing the wipe and that kind of thing. So for me, those are two things that are very uncomfortable
Oh,
for me.
wow.
So, but I will definitely be sharing. I think it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, two like super important things that you shared with us today. First of all, uncovering the unconscious, the talk track that's underneath. Mindset is everything, and getting out of your comfort zone, right? Like you would be surprised at what you can accomplish when you just take a step out of your comfort zone.
100%. And it doesn't have to be something huge. You don't have to climb Kilimanjaro.
No,
You could go and, call somebody that you haven't spoken to for 10 years and say, let's
exactly.
meet for coffee.
Exactly.
It could be something as simple as that.
Yeah. But it should have a warning label. It is addictive because as soon as you take that first step, you're going to take more. So
I love that. I love
be
that.
prepared. Oh, amazing. All right. So at the end of every episode, I ask three questions and I cannot wait to hear your answers. I think I know what they're going to be, but I cannot wait. Midlife is the perfect time to fill in the blank.
Change your life.
Yes, it is. It absolutely
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Stronger, wiser, smarter than you've ever been. It's the perfect time. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could write a sticky note to stick on the mirror of every midlife woman, what would it say?
I love you and you are worthy.
Mm, You know how many people have said that? Like, it's such a beautiful, it gets me in the feels every time somebody says it because we are so freaking hard on ourselves.
Yeah. Like literally doing that mirror talk as often
Yeah.
as I did and reminding myself that I love you, like saying it meaningfully, like the amount of times that I just cried in front of a mirror. I think my husband probably thought I'd lost it, but yeah,
Yeah.
we
So
need that
true.
reminder.
We do. I mean, I've done the same thing as you. Yeah. It's so, so powerful. Oh my goodness. Okay. If there is a book, a resource, or an idea that you come back to again and again and again on your own journey, what would that be?
With hands down, it would be The Big Leap. It
Yeah.
is a book that, and that's by Gay Hendricks, and that's a book that I read over and
Me too.
over and over again. It
Me
is so
too.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you how many times I've gone back to that book.
Yeah,
Can't tell
it's
you.
like my book is dog-eared and it's been very well
Yeah.
read, but
And
it's just amazing.
yeah, I've gifted it to so many people as well too, because it
I've done the same
literally,
thing,
yeah, yeah, amazing. Oh my
including my
God.
children actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, if we had had that book in our 20s, we would be like lethal by now.
Right? So true, so true.
I know, I know. Thank you so much for sharing your story so honestly with us, for just demonstrating how, like I said, so beautifully how, those three things, getting uncomfortable, you know, the mindset stuff, like your story, as I said, is just such a beautiful example of that. And I hope all of you listening just really take some inspiration from Jodi. So thank you for being here with us.
And thank you for having me and for allowing me to share. It's
Oh,
just it's so special and I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
you are most welcome. So, welcome to the episode wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Jodi's story is truly inspiring. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have been following her on Instagram for a while and watching her journey step by step. But, you know, the a lot of what she talked about was stuff that I talk about a lot on this podcast, but I think she really drove home a couple of really important things. And the first thing is, understanding, whenever we have a goal and we're trying to achieve something and we keep failing, when we keep self sabotaging, when we keep not showing up for ourselves, becoming aware of the talk track underneath it, right? Because usually there's something that we've picked up that we're completely unaware of that is running the show. So, if you are in that situation, I highly, highly encourage you to read the book, The Big Leap, that she mentioned in this episode, because it is a powerful way to understand how we get in our own way of the things that we say that we want for our lives. The second thing is the mindset work. You cannot have any lasting transformation without having a major mindset shift. And Jodi shared that so beautifully with us. She went from self-loathing and really horrible self-talk, which a lot of us have, to self-love and actually seeing herself as an athlete. So now she shows up in her life as an athlete. That mindset shift is so powerful because she will not be able to slip back into those old habits because she has shifted her identity. And the third thing that she really reinforced was about getting out of your comfort zone. And I cannot say this enough, right? Um, when we take a step out of our comfort zone, it fundamentally changes who we are and how we approach things from that point. Because every time we take a step out of our comfort zone, we are reinforcing the message of self-trust and for showing up for ourselves. And as Jodi mentioned, it doesn't need to be a huge, big leap, to do something like she's doing, climbing Kilimanjaro. It can be a tiny, tiny little step. But those tiny little steps lead up to big things, because once you take a step out of your comfort zone and you see that, oh, look, I didn't die, nobody got hurt, and I actually loved it, you have now laid the foundation to take the next step out of your comfort zone. And the only way that we can grow, the only way that we can achieve the things that we want for our lives, is to constantly be stepping out of our comfort zone. And I always say, to my clients, and you've probably heard me say this on this podcast, is to take the tiniest step that you can take in the direction that you want to go. So if it's starting a new business, maybe you do some research, or you reach out to somebody who has a business similar to yours, or you go research something on the internet. It doesn't need to be a huge thing. Just take a tiny step in the direction that you want to go. As I mentioned, we'll make sure that Jodi's Instagram handle is here in the show notes. Go find her on Instagram. Her handle is at Jodi, Jodi Echakowitz. It's Echakowitz on Instagram. We'll make sure it's in the show notes here. So it really was an inspiring story, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And if you did enjoy it, the greatest honor that you could give us would be to pass this episode on to a friend, a relative, a colleague, or somebody that you think will also be inspired by it. And you can go leave us a rating, a review on your favorite podcast platform. So until next time.